Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about what's basically going to be the fifth attempt to basically get the Fantastic Four done right on film. We had that Roger Corman Fantastic Four film, which technically was never released. We had the mid 2000s one with Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis. We had a sequel to that movie because that one did well enough at the box office. Then we had Josh Trank try to reboot it in 2015. And now we're here with the MCU, in full form. We're all the way out in the multiverse saga now, and Kevin Feige, the guy who's kind of running the Marvel movie ship for years now, thought it'd be time to basically introduce the Fantastic Four within the MCU. And here we are, and I'm glad to report, even before I start reviewing this film, they finally got the Fantastic Four right. But in this film, though, you guys, with this fresh start to the Fantastic Four, it's basically treated like a reboot again. We are still in the MCU. We're still kind of where after Thunderbolts and all those other stories were. We follow the Fantastic Four in an alternate reality. I think it's 828 for this reality, and I think 626 is what the um, original MCU timeline is, or something along that. So basically, it's in an alternate universe. It's happening in a concurrently and not in where we're currently at with the MCU. And so basically, it's during this futuristic look at the 1960s, and they have technology way beyond where we're at right now in 2025. And the Fantastic Four are regarded as heroes, and they eventually run into this problem where there's this character named Galactus that shows up to their planet, as well as the Silver Surfer, and they basically start with a warning that that Earth is basically going to be doomed. And so, since everybody looks up to the Fantastic Four to resolve the problems on Earth, at least this version of it, they basically go out to space, track down Galactus with their technology that they have. Since, like I said, this is like a futuristic 60s where the technology is really good, and they basically have the technology to do such things. And so they meet up with Galactus at where he's currently residing, and he will spare Earth and the cost that Sue Storm, who's the Invisible Woman of the Fantastic Four, will sacrifice her child to make sure that Earth survives. So obviously the Fantastic Four turns down this offer. They return to Earth. They let the people of Earth know what's going on. And so obviously they're not at a good place with the people of Earth at that point. They're fully willing to hand over Sue Storm's child to basically make sure the Earth lives. And so over the course of this film, the Fantastic Four have to figure out, how can we stop Galactus? How can we do it without sacrificing this child that both Sue Storm and Reed Richards welcomed to the world recently? And how can we basically still have that great Fantastic Four reputation that we've already had? We're the astronauts of space, we're the protectors of Earth. And how can we kind of maintain that title while resolving this issue as well? So this all happens over the course of Fantastic Four, the first steps. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this film quite a bit. This is a film where they take something that you're familiar with, that have a traditional frame of mind of what the Fantastic Four is, and they found a way to have a really unique take on it. They really have this cool Jetsons aesthetic to the film that really makes it feel unique and different. There's this whole different world that we're introduced to because this is an alternate version of Earth, where don't have any kind of preconceived MCU notions going into this film. It's completely fresh and on its own. And obviously, I'm sure we're eventually going to have a way where these Fantastic Four work their way into the MCU. I'm sure for Avengers Doomsday or whatever other project they have in mind coming up soon. And it's just so fresh to see a film where it's totally convinced that it's on its own, it's standing on its own, it's willing to work on its own. It's not willing to worry about all those other previous Marvel projects we had that it has to tie into. It's totally not worried about that, and I think that's just what's so great about it is it's willing to stand on its own, and it has a fresh take on a story that we're pretty familiar with for the most part, but also finding a way to make it fresh through the material that they're working with. But for my positives and negatives of Fantastic Four First Steps, first and foremost, the team chemistry here is absolutely great. I love how the four heroes work as a team in this movie. They found a way to basically make you care about each and every member of the Fantastic Four. They have great screen chemistry, like I said. They work well together. They poke fun at each other. They still feel like a family. They have problems like a family would have. And so they make it feel real and organic. It felt real. Even for Ben Grimm being this big rock creature as the Thing, it feels like a real person dealing with real world problems. And I think that's just what works so well about the film is the film knows exactly what a real family would have to deal with and what a family with superpowers would have to deal with on top of those other everyday problems. And I think that's what works so well about the film is the four heroes work together as a team, and it does feel like a family with their overall screen chemistry that they have together. I also like the 1960s look and aesthetic to the film. It really does feel like something out of a Jetsons episode or a Star Trek episode. It really has this cool, unique take on what if the 60s had this futuristic technology that you were not even close to yet here in modern day, present day, in our reality. And what if they had access to that technology during the 60s, during the space race, during all this stuff that um, we're clearly not at yet in our current times. But it's just the way the film looks is just super great. I would even go so far as to say it's probably one of the most visually appealing films of 2025 so far. Just the way it looks, the aesthetic of it, even the way the police cars have like little flying cars that fly around the city to make sure that there's no crime going on or anything like that. Even just the small details like that really work well in this movie. And I just really like the overall aesthetic that this film has. It has a cool, futuristic 60s look to it. I also like all the cars and the technology that the film has. We have this little robot character named Herbie that works for the Fantastic Four. He's kind of like the Betty the Robot of the Jetsons. And so they have all this technology available to them. They're able to track down, dialogue that's not exactly, known to people of Earth and things like that. So they have all this technology available to them. They even have their own Fantastic Four car that they drive around whenever there's a crime going on that they have to investigate as a team. So just the way the cars and the technology are utilized in the film, all very unique and cool and original. I also thought the use of Galactus was very strong in this film. Yeah, it's important that Doctor Doom is in the Fantastic Four universe. But I think with so many film tries out, with so many attempts at the Fantastic Four, they had to really try with a new villain. I think going the Galactus route was the right way. We kind of had an attempt at Galactus in an earlier Fantastic Four film, but he's just kind of a giant cloud in the sky. But this time around, they had a use of Galactus that really feels like a huge threat. He feels kind of more human-like, more like a giant person. And I like how he looks more like you would see him in the comic books. So I liked how they used Galactus here. Very strong use of the character. And I just overall really liked how the character was utilized in the story and that M.C.U. was able to try a different character outside of Doctor Doom to make the Fantastic Four work as a film. There's 2 post-credit scenes here. One of them is more important than the other, but I would say stick around for both of them. They're both pretty fun. Specifically, the mid-credit scene after the film is over with. You'll really want to stick around for that. It really leads up to something that really has me very excited as to where the MCU is going to go next and how the Fantastic Four is going to tie into it. I also thought the use of science was very strong here. Reed Richards is a very smart character, and so there's always times where he's doing little equations on a chalkboard or trying to figure something out with science and math. And just how he explains his science and explains it to the team how they can understand it as well. I also thought was very, very effective and useful here. And it just kind of makes you appreciate the people that really admire science and really know it very well. And so I like how the film does utilize the idea that people that know a lot about science are really kind of the people that understand our world the best. And so there's a fun use of that over the course of the film. But for my negatives of this movie, and this first negative that was actually a problem I had with this movie even before it came out, I noticed in the trailers that the Thing, or at least Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who plays the Thing in this movie, didn't have a voice that he was using for the Thing. He just used his regular voice to voice the Thing. And for me personally, that's not the Thing that I'm familiar with at all. The Thing I always knew was, it's clobbering time, and like all this other stuff. And I know that the running joke in the movie is that he doesn't like saying that. But for me personally, I think it's a really creatively bankrupt when an actor decides to not use a voice for a character that you clearly need to use a voice for. So I didn't like that aspect of the film. Like I said, it's been bothering me since the trailers for the film. So watching the film in full, I still kind of feel that way, where I really feel like the Thing needs a voice. Michael Chiklis did it. I didn't like the way the 2015 Fantastic Four did it, but at least that version of the Thing did that as well. So I think moving forward, if you're going to do the Thing on film, you got to give him that voice. You got to give him that clobber in time voice. That's the Thing that I'm familiar with, and I think everybody else is familiar with too. And overall, too, I thought the film could have benefited from some more action scenes. There's a lot of times in the movie where we go a really long stretch without any kind of action at all. And this is a Fantastic Four film. People want to see Human Torch doing fire stuff, Visible Woman doing invisible stuff, the Thing throwing stuff, the Mr. Fantastic, using his stretchy powers. And I'm going to get to him next here in a minute. But yeah, I think more action scenes would have benefited this film. There's a long stretch of footage we go through where we get no action at all. It's basically just the Fantastic Four figuring out this tough conflict they're in. I'm not saying, to completely abandon story to do the action, but at the same time, if you're going to do a full effort on the story, just make sure you have a lot of cool action to go with it, because like I said, in this film, there's a very long stretch we have where we really don't get a lot of action at all. There's also this thing going on around online, and I know this was going to be in the movie because it was announced a while ago that John Malkovich was going to play Red Ghost in this film. All his content's removed from the movie. The closest they have to Red Ghost being in this movie, and he's like this Fantastic Four villain in the comics, is a lot of his apes, or his super apes, I should say, that work for him in the comics, appear in like two little moments in the movie when we kind of are caught up on who the Fantastic Four are. And that's the closest we got to Red Ghost being in the movie. I would have personally preferred John Malkovich showing up as Red Ghost himself in the film, keep his content in place. I don't know what they were thinking in the editing room, like if it really interrupted the film that much. I would have kept it in there. I think it belongs in there. Especially after seeing the film and how awkward it is when these like super ape characters show up and we don't have Red Ghost accompanying them or anything. Would have kept it in there. They didn't keep it in there, and there's a whole online article about it, why they thought they had to get rid of it and all this other stuff. It's really too bad, because I really think Red Ghost should have showed up in the movie. We also get another Fantastic Four villain in the movie who actually does show up in the film, named Mole Man, and he's played by Paul Walter Hauser of Richard Jewell fame and Cobra Kai fame. I really like the character. My only negative with it is that really don't get a lot of moments with him. He just kind of briefly shows up at the beginning. He kind of helps the Fantastic Four in one part where they kind of need Mole Man to kind of help everybody else get rid of Galactus and everything. And for me personally, it was such a fun character. It was so cool to see Paul Walter Hauser play the character that I would have liked to have seen more times where Mole Man showed up and either caused trouble or helped out again, like he was doing later on in the movie. Such a fun character that I really would have liked to have seen more from this character. And like I was bringing up earlier, I think more chances need to happen in the script of Reed Richards actually using his elastic powers. And I get it, this is a film where the Fantastic Four have to work as a team, and that's kind of the appeal of the movie. But Johnny Storm has plenty of times to use his powers in the movie. The Thing has plenty of opportunities in the film to use his powers in the movie. And same with Sue Storm. And Reed Richards is kind of the guy left out in this. Yes, there's a couple of little small moments where his elastic powers are used, but I would have liked to have seen a Fantastic Four film where his elastic powers are used more often throughout the story. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Fantastic Four First Steps an 8.5 out of 10. It's a very strong movie. It's a very good Marvel film. There's a couple negatives along the way, like I mentioned here, my negatives, but for the most part, this is a really good movie. I'm glad that Marvel's kind of at the top of their game again with their movies. As far as I know, the box office is going really well for this film. It's probably the strongest Fantastic Four release we ever had. And hopefully if they use more of the Fantastic Four in future Marvel projects, hopefully it's a fun use of those characters. And I can't wait to see where Marvel goes next. This film gets an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I highly recommend seeing Fantastic Four, The First Steps.